and 43 degrees in downtown Seattle. I'm Ursula Royteen.
From Marysville to Magnolia, this is KIRO Radio, 97.3 FM. News and talk, powered by the Pacific Northwest.
The Dori Monson Show on KIRO Radio. This is The Big Lead.
Oh, it's good to be back. It's so good to be back.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Shocking to be back. Should I tell people right now or should I save it for the fastest 15?
Oh, go for it.
Okay.
Just so they know.
So this morning I get up kind of leisurely because that's what I do on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on vacation for the last 2.5 weeks. And I get up at 7 o'clock and I think I can go back to sleep because I'm on vacation. So I go back to sleep till 9. I get up. My wife's sitting by the fireplace. I said, you know, the only thing bad about today is later today I'm going to have to do show prep for tomorrow's show because somehow I had it in my schedule that I was vacationing through today and coming back tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So then at 9 o'clock, I open up my email, and one of the first things I see is an email from Nicole with a Wednesday prep. And it says at the beginning, welcome back, Happy New Year. And it didn't register because I'm still in vacation mode. So
So you just shut down the email.
So I finished going through the email, and then about 5 minutes later, I go, what? So I call up Nicole, and I said, and she goes, that's so weird. I was just about to call you because I haven't seen a prep email from you yet. And I said, that's because I'm not working today. And she goes, yeah, you are. And then while she's on the phone, she walks into our assistant program director's office and says, do you have Dori working today? And he goes,
and you're hoping?
He goes, yeah. So I don't know where the breakdown was, but I had me coming back tomorrow. So then I'm like Dagwood Bumstead, clothes flying, I'm running through the house.
Because there's a certain amount of hours that you need, like minimum.
I usually spend, no exaggeration, I usually spend 7 hours prepping for every show, at least. Maybe more than that. So what folks are going to get today...
You know what? You are refreshed, though.
But the
you
thing
look
is,
really relaxed.
Today's show is shaping up as so good, it maybe has led me to believe to the conclusion that I've been preparing way too much. I've been
maybe in
over-preparing.
2019, you don't need 7 hours. You can condense it and do it in 2.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
No, I need 7. If I condense it to 2.
But we did get you an extra 7 hours of vacation, I guess.
Yeah.
This route.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's just all worked out perfectly. So I hope you guys had
Welcome
good Christmas,
back.
New Year's. We'll talk about all that a little later when we get into the fastest 15. But believe it or not, we do have lots of news to get to, and I am fired up about all the nonsense that's going on around here. So let's get right to the big lead.
The Big Lead. Your tax dollars at work.
There was an article in the New York Times last week that talked about how they fear the Seattleization of New York City. They're afraid that with Amazon coming in, that it's going to lead to, and New York is already a very expensive city. They're afraid that it's going to lead to even more high housing costs, and with all these Amazon workers coming in, the tech wealth is going to drive up the cost of everything. And they have reason to be fearful because in Seattle, according to the Seattle Times FYI guy, Seattle has had the biggest increase in cost of living of any city in the country over the last few years. And it's not even close. San Francisco is number 2, and their cost of living has gone up 28%. In Seattle, the cost of living has gone up 38%. And I want you to think about what an underhanded tax that is on every single person who lives here. Because inflation is a tax. If a nation just has a lot of debt, then they cheapen the cost of money. The cheapened money means, well, we can pay off our debt with cheaper money, but it also drives up the cost of everything. So inflation is a tax on every single human being in the area that's experiencing inflation. Well, that's what's happening in Seattle, where we have the highest rate of inflation of any city in the country. So what that means is if your total expenses, cost of living expenses, are $40,000 a year, that means in Seattle, you are paying about an extra $16,000 versus the average city in America. It is a massive tax on every person. If you work downtown, if you have a living wage, working class job, and you have to buy lunch, and it's an extra $1, $1.50 or $2 every single day, well, that adds up to hundreds of dollars a year. Again, that's over and above other cities in the country. Now, the Times and the New York Times, they blamed what tech does to housing prices. And yes, that is a factor. But another factor is the cost of government. When the accused child rapist added thousands of new government bureaucrat lackeys, most of whom were making six figures, to the city of Seattle payroll, well, all of us have to pay for that in the form of taxes. When they put restrictions on employers, when they mandate now $16 an hour starting this week for the biggest employers in Seattle, that gets passed along. The cost of fast food is more expensive here. The cost of deli food in a supermarket is higher here. It is a cost that is passed on to every single person. And the biggest culprit is an evil government that would rather grow the number of six-figure bureaucrat lackeys than allow families to keep more of their money. And so the beat goes on. The greatest inflation in the United States is right here in Seattle, and it's affecting every family you can imagine. Next up in the big lead.
The Big Lead. I told you so.
We also, just a couple of days ago, see, this is a good day for me to come back. We just got confirmation, something I've been telling you about for years now, that Jay Inslee, our governor, is going to run for president of the United States. He confirmed it in an interview with The Atlantic magazine, which leads to a question. You'd think, Nicole, that Jay Inslee would have made the presidential announcement on our show.
You would think.
Why wouldn't he do that? We go way
hasn't even
back.
confirmed it for us.
We go way, way back with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple years ago, or actually a year ago, I might have thought that was possible. I'm not sure about this last year.
Yeah, well, he's done so many crazy things that it's been tough for me to stay silent.
I know.
So yeah, Jay Inslee is going to run for president. He confirmed that in this magazine interview. He says that he's going to run on a single issue, that being climate change. Now, what I find interesting about that is Jay Inslee just lost another major carbon tax bill. 2 times now, the people of this state have said absolutely not to a climate change bill because the people are tired of getting scammed by the cultists on this issue. And so, they understand that a dumb talk show host from Ballard makes more sense on this subject than the 96% scientific consensus. By the way, speaking of the 96% scientific consensus that the cultists always like to cite on climate change, that's why we have to spend trillions. Are you smarter than 96% of scientists? It's interesting how they pick and choose. I just saw a survey yesterday. 96%, same percentage, of Border Patrol experts say a wall or a barrier would help deter the influx of illegal immigration. If the left is so married to 96% consensus when it comes to climate change, why would they ignore 96% of experts when it comes to building the wall? But I digress. Jay Inslee says that when it comes to climate change, there now appears to be an appetite for someone who has credibility and a long track record and, most importantly, a vision statement. It's changed to show an opening in a Democratic primary, I believe. So he's going to run on climate change, even though he can't get that carbon tax in far-left Washington state. The people of this state saw through the scam. How does he think that's going to fare nationwide? How does he think the coal miners who swung states for Trump are going to feel about his anti-coal attitude? How does he think the people of North Dakota, which is riding an energy boom so that they are one of the most economically prosperous states, how does he feel about the fact that the Cato Institute ranked Jay Inslee 50th out of 50 governors when it came to taxation and spending? And that's before the absolute whack job budget that he proposed right before I went on vacation. How does he think the people of America are going to respond to a candidate who a couple of months ago on CNBC said that his first order of business would be to raise everyone's taxes?
Will have to do what is done on many occasions after Republican governors or presidents have come in. We will have to restore the balance of our fiscal condition. It happened when Bush blew up the deficit, and we're going to have to do that again when we have another Democratic administration to fix this deficit.
That's a hard platform, though, to run on.
It is
raising taxes.
It is. And I'm not saying that that is part of the necessity of it.
Yeah, you are. Come on. You lied to me and my listeners about not raising taxes. You try that again? You try lying to the American people about not raising taxes? I will make sure that every person in the country hears the lie that Jay Inslee told on my show about not raising taxes before proposing the 3 biggest tax increases in the history of Washington State. I guarantee that I will make sure every person in the nation hears the lie that he told about taxes. But there on CNBC, he was honest about it. What I find ironic is he said the reason they have to raise taxes when he's President Inslee. Let me play the beginning of that again.
And at some point, America will have to do what is done on many occasions after Republican governors or presidents have come in. We will have to restore the balance of our fiscal condition. It happened when Bush blew up the deficit.
Okay, Bush did blow up the deficit. That was my biggest point of criticism with George W. Bush. Deficit went from $4 billion to $9 billion. How does Jay Inslee not mention, if that's a problem for him, that Barack Obama blew up the deficit from $9 billion to $20 billion? That Barack Obama increased the deficit more than the 43 presidents who preceded him combined. Why does Jay Inslee not mention that? I guess that's an inconvenient truth. Oh, no, that's Al Gore's line. I thought Al Gore was going to become the climate change president. I'm all confused here. Next up in the big lead.
The Big Lead. I sense a Dori rant coming on.
We are about a week and a half away from the closure of the viaduct. And by the way, I will never call it Viadoom. That word will never appear on my show because it's just a little too cutesy. It's just going to be gridlock, carefully engineered by the developers, by the people who run this region to make the waterfront business property owners, to increase the value by billions and billions of dollars. It's going to be a week from Friday when the viaduct closes down. So here's what's being predicted. And I'm going to talk with our transportation specialist, Chris Sullivan, coming up at 12:30, just in a few minutes here, about what the impact's going to be. But if you're trying to drive into Seattle from the south end, from Kent, Des Moines, from, oh my goodness, West Seattle, those poor people in West Seattle, I don't know how long it's going to take them to get across now. Coming up from Tacoma or Federal Way. What about the south end, or the north end, rather? Is the north end going to be as affected? Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, up to Everett, Marysville, and the east side. When I-5 is gridlocked, the bridge is back way up. And so how much should we expect? Chris Sullivan is going to join me right after Ursula's news here at the bottom of the hour, and we will let you know how much it's going to impact your life. The viaduct closure, creeping closer. And we'll keep you posted on it here on the Dori Monson Show. And that is your big lead for today.
The Big Lead on KIRO Radio.
Okay, Ursula, we'll check the news. And then, how is your life going to be impacted by the closure of the viaduct? Chris Sullivan joins us next on the Dori Monson Show.
This hour of the Dori Monson Show is brought to you by Insulation Northwest.
Seabass kicks it through, and the Seahawks win. The Seahawks finish their